This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
Today is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Well, this week, before I bring on my scheduled guest, Shirin Bezhadi, I want to share something with you about my new sponsor, Outreach Genius. For the past several weeks, you've heard me talk about their amazing AI technology that acts as a combination answering service, inbound, outbound call center, appointment setter, and personal assistant. So I thought to myself, how much fun might it be to not just tell you about this, but enable you to experience it for yourselves. To that end, the Outreach Geniuses have set up an agent for me. Her name is Alex, and she knows quite a bit about me and my various business interests. Just like she would know all about your brands and businesses if any of you in the home service franchise sector were to partner with Outreach Genius. To help me showcase just how smart this AI is, I recruited a member of my franchise fam to place a call to Alex and riddle her with questions about me and my businesses. You're about to eavesdrop on that conversation. And by the way, who better to task with placing that call than another robot pro, Jenny Young, founder and CEO of the Brooklyn Robot Foundry. Okay, ready? Here we go.
Hi, you've reached Stan Friedman's concierge service. I'm Alex, the AI assistant for Stan. Who am I speaking with?
Hi, this is Jenny.
Nice to meet you, Jenny. I can help with Stan's work and services, his Franchise Today podcast, or FRM Solutions. Where would you like to start?
Do you have anything that you know about Stan and his work that he's done in chicken wing industry?
Yes, Stan was an executive vice president of Wing Zone from 2003 to 2006, but is still the chairman of the National Buffalo Wing Hall of Fame and has been since its inception in 2007. Would you like to know more about his current work?
I would, yeah.
Great. Just so I can assist you best, have you called today about Stan's Franchise Today podcast, his CRM tool, FRM Solutions, or franchising consultation and advisory?
Okay, let's hear a little bit more about what does he do in terms of advisory.
Stan helps franchisors build scalable systems, sensible recruitment, and a culture that drives performance. How can he assist you specifically in your business?
I don't know. I just had heard about him and I thought maybe it would make sense to hear a little bit more about the types of services that he can offer.
Stan provides consultation in areas such as operations, leadership, culture, and compliance for franchisors. Is there a specific area where you'd like more information or assistance?
Yeah, I want to hear a little bit more about what does he do with culture.
Stan focuses on creating a strong organizational culture that drives performance in franchise systems. He helps franchisors develop practical strategies to align their team and franchisees with the company's values and goals, fostering a positive and productive work environment. Would you be interested in discussing this further with Stan in a consultation?
No, not yet. But can you tell me the other types of things that's part of the service offering?
Sure. In addition to culture consulting, Stan also assists with scalable growth strategies, recruitment practices, onboarding processes, field support, and compliance. He provides insights and frameworks that franchisors can implement to enhance their overall operations and performance. Would you like to explore any specific area further?
Yeah, I want to hear about recruitment.
Stan helps franchisors develop effective recruitment strategies that ensure they find the right fit for their franchise systems. This includes creating a clear value proposition for potential franchisees, streamlining the application process, and establishing metrics to evaluate and improve recruitment efforts. Would you like to discuss how to proceed from here, either with a meeting or taking a message?
Well, tell me a little bit more about the metrics that he can help you with.
Stan helps franchisors establish key performance indicators, KPIs, to track the effectiveness of their recruitment strategies. This can include metrics such as lead conversion rates and the success rates of new franchisees. By analyzing these metrics, franchisors can make data-driven decisions to enhance their recruitment processes. Would you like to discuss this further with Stan or explore something else?
Where did he get the idea to come up with these metrics? Is he basing it on some studies or something?
Stan draws on his extensive experience in franchising and his work with various franchise systems to develop these metrics. He combines insights from industry best practices, case studies, and his own observations to create effective strategies for recruiting franchisees. Would you like to discuss booking a time to speak with Stan about this, or perhaps take a message for him?
Oh my God, this is incredible. I can't believe how much information you know. Can you tell me some more about the companies that he's kind of basing his KPIs on?
Stan has worked with a diverse range of franchise systems across various industries, which helps him tailor KPIs to different business models. Some of the sectors include food and beverage, retail, and service-based franchises. Recently worked with Duff's Famous Wings and Brooklyn Robot Foundry.
How long am I allowed to talk to you for?
You're welcome to talk as long as you like. I'm here to provide information. Is there a particular area you'd like to explore further?
Does Stan have a dog?
Stan has a 6-year-old Glenavy Terrier named Jack, known for having a big mouth, referred to as the mouth of the self.
Wow, I'm blown away. This is incredible. What was your name again?
I'm Alex, Stan's AI assistant. I'm glad I could help. If you have more questions or need assistance, just let me know.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm glad I could assist you. Have a wonderful day.
Pretty impressive, don't you think? Currently, this AI is available specifically for franchises in the home services space. Roofers, plumbers, tree services, you get the drift. There are a myriad of money-saving and money-making tasks that this technology can provide for you too. Now that you've witnessed it firsthand, take action and get in touch with the Outreach Geniuses at www.outreachgenius.ai. And now, allow me to introduce you to today's guest, Shirin Bezhadi, keynote speaker, author, board member, and advisor. Born in Iran, Shirin faced the reality of her country being taken over by an oppressive regime when she was just 12. The youngest of 5 kids, she was once actually arrested for having a book in her possession. It was then that her mother was able to get her out of the country and all alone to the USA by way of Turkey. Working at a gas station in Los Angeles at age 17, Shirin shared with a coworker her vision, which was to one day run a big company. It was this vision that guided her to becoming a very successful entrepreneur and CEO through a career that started as a CPA, business advisor, and CFO of several organizations. Joining a team with a big dream, Shirin oversaw the financial growth of what would become Home Franchise Concepts. In 2015, she successfully completed a private equity partnership, and as CEO, she shared her vision yet again, this time with over 2,000 franchise owners. Through well-organized execution of this vision, the company's growth skyrocketed in the next 3.5 years to become a billion-dollar business. Today, from the stage and in boardrooms across the world, Shirin works with leaders to create and implement an authentic vision that inspires, informs, and directs substantial engagement and growth in their entire organizations. Shirin Bezhadi, welcome to Franchise Today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's going to be a fun conversation, Shirin, because we're not strangers, although we are. We don't have any real nexus to each other in the immediate past, but as we were talking about in the green room before we started here today, you and I did have a professional meeting back in your office in Orange, California, some 10 years ago. And to my amazement, when I can't remember what I ate for lunch, I remember all the people that were involved in that. So my visit to Home Franchise Concepts back then was pretty memorable.
I'm so glad to hear.
So Shirin, we're going to do what we do every week, but we're going to put a little bit of a different spin on it today. I always ask people to take us back to the Wayback Machine, to their first intersection with franchising. But there's a backstory to your career and your life that compels us to take a step back a little further than that. So take us back to Iran and tell us about your growing up years and how you wound up here from there.
Yes, I was born and raised in Iran to a busy family. I was the youngest of 5 children. And growing up, we were in a very nice environment, a very loving environment. I had lots of cousins and friends. And this is the Iranian before the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is before the revolution happened. Life was normal, and we grew up pretty normal until I was a preteen and chaos happened. That is when the revolution of 1979 happened and changed everything. First of all, what it changed was the sense of safety, because I witnessed all that went on to bring on that change. There were people on the streets, there was the government pushing back, there was bloodshed, and then a regime change. And what that regime change did was basically change our lives completely. There was so much chaos, unsettled experiences where post-revolution who knew who was in charge. There were people on the street with guns, pretty, I want to say, normal for a lot of revolutions. Not that revolutions are ever normal, but it's post-revolution. You didn't know what to expect out of life. And that definitely did contribute to this whole sense of where is safety, which is a very difficult thing for a child to absorb. And those changes resulted in me having to, much like other students, having to split the schools between boys and girls. We used to hang out with boys all the time, but of course this new regime was very much an anti that. And what that changed for us was it just gave us a perspective that we're different. And perhaps safety, again, was about being quiet, sitting in a corner, not standing out. Because post that revolution, standing out could mean death. People would be arrested without trials, executed, and it just was a dangerous place to be. In that process and in those years, I was arrested as a preteen a couple of times for really no crimes. One was I was just walking on the street and they liked to pick people up, especially girls. And of course, they let me go eventually. And the second time was that I had a book in my bag, which was a no-no. It wasn't even a big deal of a book, but it was a book. So it's kind of interesting now. I know we're going to talk about it now, but upon reflection, I go, they didn't want me to speak, and now I'm speaking. And they arrested me for owning a book, and now I wrote a book. What a full circle. But as a result, it was clear that I wouldn't be safe in Iran. And my parents, once I graduated high school at 17, somehow decided that it was best for me to leave. I know that I felt that I was at risk. It wasn't unusual. It was a good friend of mine, best friend of mine, was arrested in Iran and was in jail for 10 years. She was arrested when she was 15. So it wasn't an unusual expectation. And so before I knew it, they broke the news to me that it was time for me to leave. So imagine, I was 17 years old. I came from a close-knit family, lots of love. Youngest of 5, had never been away from home, really didn't even know what it was like to go to the bank, go to a grocery store. I mean, I had done those things, but not on my own. And I had to get on my mom's passport and leave everything behind, everything. I had to very confidentially say bye to people. I had to pack everything I owned in a suitcase. And I had to get on my mom's passport and leave everything, including my dad, my family. And we went to Istanbul, Turkey, because that was the one place, it was a neighboring country, and it was one place we thought we could do. And here's the thing. I knew my mom was with me at the time, but I also knew she was going to leave. So when I say I left everything behind, I mean literally everything behind. I found myself in Istanbul at a woman's home that would take in girls. And my mom left. I had no idea how to survive. I had no idea how to feed myself. I had no idea where I would get money, or I had some, think about it. There are no cell phones, and I had to really learn and learn really fast. And I feel like when I reflect on it, there are forks in the road in life. I could have succumbed. I could have said, well, this is my destiny and I'm going to be here and live with this. Or I could do what I ended up doing, which is to say, nope, I'm going to find my way out. By the way, nothing wrong with Istanbul and Turkey, but places I was staying were just not very good areas, not a lot of opportunities. And so I looked outside and I just knew that I would find my way to the United States. Before the revolution, I had been to the United States with my family, so it wasn't strange to me. And I had a sister 4 years older than me that lived here at the time. So I knew there was something to look forward to. And through lots of trials and tribulations and a lot of lessons learned while I was there, I finally found my way to the United States, which I'm not going to belabor all of that. There's a lot of stories there. But once I landed in Los Angeles, I thought, well, I've got to do something to survive. I decided to take a job, and working at a gas station as a cashier seemed like something I could do. So I did. This gas station wasn't in the best area. So the booth that I sat in was a bulletproof booth. And I got the worst shifts, and as you can imagine. But I remember vividly a memory of one day sitting at that booth and feeling sorry for myself. And after taking some time to feel sorry, I thought, okay, well, I am unfortunate to be here in this position, but maybe my point of view needs to change. Maybe I am fortunate to be here. As poor as I may be, I don't have my friends, I don't have my parents. I didn't look like I had much in the way of prospects, but I had hope. I ended up with having some hope. And that grew into this idea that I would share with people that someday I was going to run a big company, which is a strange thing if you think about somebody like me would say, because I was poor. I was in the nowhere land in not a very good area. My name is Shirin Bezhadi. It's not exactly a name people look at and go, that's what is going to be the CEO someday. But I thought I was. And so that's what mobilized me.
How did you get yourself into college, and how did you wind up? How did you wind up with the education needed? And where did the funding for that come from? How did you manage that?
Yes, so I went to a state college. I applied. I got in. I worked full time at the gas station, and because I ended up doing really, really well with my grades, I ended up getting 50% scholarship through some funds that were available to people like me. And gradually, and the state schools were not that expensive. Little by little, my one sister came to the United States. My other sister, everybody started showing up eventually. But going to college is where it was at. I was like, I'm going to do this. So I went to college full time and worked full time. And eventually I decided that because I was going to run a big company someday, that was my vision, that I had to learn the language of business, which was accounting. And so I took on the accounting major. And towards the end of my college years, I decided I wanted to work for a big eight, which was when I went to the career center, the nice lady there said, wow, this is a good school, but I don't know if it's the kind of school that those companies recruit from that actively. And at the time I wanted to be an intern. And she's like, internship is even harder because there are fewer positions. This is where I learned, or maybe I got confirmation that you can hear people out. It's good to hear their points of view, but you have to remember it's their point of view. And it oftentimes comes from where they are. It doesn't mean this is where you are. So I chose not to listen to it. And I did apply and did a great job with interview and ended up becoming an intern at EY. And then eventually, therefore, when I graduated, I got offers from all the big eight. So I was on my way. At EY, Ernst & Young, I was so excited that I opted in I kept asking for the toughest clients, whatever I could do to learn. And I got a lot of great reviews, feedback. It was fantastic. It was a great experience.
I'm going to take exception with something that you said, though. You said that you were poor, and I might describe what I hear from you as not being poor, maybe broke, which is a financial condition, but poor is a state of mind, and your state of mind sounds to me to be much more in keeping with rich than poor.
That's a good one.
I'm just saying.
No, I like it.
So EY lasted for 2 years, and you wanted more than that, though, from what I remember reading or seeing someplace, that the audit business wasn't enough to satisfy your appetite.
Yes, I love the company. I love the people. I love my experiences, and I realized the more I did it, the better I became. Over time, it felt like I started becoming really good at auditing, which is great. It's a great profession. But in my case, I had my vision to someday run a big company. I'm like, I need to learn more about operations. And another thing happened at the same time. I realized when I was in my obviously 20s, and I thought I someday want to have children. And at the time when I looked at people ahead of me, especially women, first of all, there weren't that many people ahead of me, and there are now. I'm so grateful that people get to do whatever they want to do. But back then it wasn't the case, and certainly not with an emphasis on being a mother. So between those two, I knew that I wanted to move on. It was a very difficult decision. I mean, can you imagine someone with my financial insecurity, with my background, making the decision to move away from a safe place and reputable place like that? It was crazy. And I remember I was very emotional about it. And again, I took the step. I decided I was going to do what I thought was a better way of achieving my vision. So I left to work for one of the clients that, EY introduced us. So this was a great thing. It was a mortgage bank. And there I started with operations, working with the servicing portfolio, learned a lot. And eventually when the CFO was ready to leave, he had lunch with me and he said, yeah, I'm ready to move on to another position. And I really think, Shirin, you can step into this, which was an unusual move because I wasn't in the accounting department at the time. I was in the loan servicing, so it's not quite the path that you normally take to get to CFO. But I realized that that I had it in me. So I thought, why not? I did go into the CEO's office and I told him that I thought I would be a good CFO, and he agreed. So here I was. I became CFO. We were at the time had $1 billion in loan servicing. We had hundreds of millions of dollars a month we would originate in loans. We had 22 branches. So a lot of great experience learning operations. This is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to learn more about how to run a company, how to be involved with operations, great executive team, until eventually interest rates went up rapidly and we had to deal with a sudden change. Because as you well know, mortgage banking is very sensitive to interest rates. We were basically a mortgage product company. And so this is where I learned, or maybe again, it was confirmed, that every problem has a solution. If you can't find a solution, maybe you need to redefine the problem. So we redefined the problem. Of course, we had brought in efficiencies and ways of dealing with the change, but it looked like that those changes were here to stay. So we asked ourselves, are we going to continue to fight and lose the battle or find a different point of view? And the different point of view was that perhaps the best thing for our mortgagees and our employees and our stakeholders would be to sell the company. So we did. In that process, I learned a lot about negotiating transactions, transitioning. All of that was great experience. And when we finally sold, there it was again, for me, a decision to make. Do I continue to look for or go on looking for another CFO position or not? It made sense to look for another CFO position. I had been with EY, then I was a CFO, and I had all these experiences. I was like, I could ask for and get a really good CFO position. But I had time to think, and I thought, Shirin, you've had this vision of one, someday running a big company, and two, you wanted to be an engaged mother, and this is your chance. So I decided to go out on my own. Back then, there weren't a lot of offsite CFOs or fractional CFOs. There are many now, and it's a great service, but there weren't many then. It was kind of a newer concept. I thought to myself, well, companies can use a CFO, companies that are in a growth mode, but they don't yet want to have a full-time CFO, or that perhaps that would be a good fit. And so in that process, I started really getting my feet wet and being on my own, got to meet a lot of great people, ended up with great clients. In that process, somebody suggested that there was a company that was looking for help with their accounting system and how they would translate their reports. And that was Budget Blinds, and that's how I met them.
Wow, what a great story. And what a great place for us to take a quick break. And when we come back from the break, let's catch up on the Budget Blind years and all the changes that go into taking a very successful company and doubling it in its productivity over a very short period of time. And this is all doing what your book is out there to do. We're telling the story of your life. And I'm certain that there are going to be those who have just gotten enough from our conversation today to be putting themselves on the short list for pre-order of the Unexpected CEO, all about your journey from the gas station cashier's booth to the billion-dollar C-suite. This is Franchise Today. I'm Stan Friedman, talking today with Shirin Bezhadi. And we're going to take a quick time out, and we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Franchise Today will be right back. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering the only CRM tool built exclusively for franchising that lets you have it your way. Whether you're a single brand needing professional tools across departments or a portfolio of brands needing franchise-specific CRM across the enterprise. Either way, FRM satisfies the needs of many with the power of one. That's right, one single instance of FRM is all it takes across departments or across brands. So if you've had it with inflexible, one-size-fits-all CRM, end your frustration today. FRM offers robust dashboarding, tailored reporting, and with open APIs, FRM pushes, pulls, and integrates with other databases, providing you with a single source of truth. Don't just take my word for it. Visit them at frmsolutions.com and order up a demo today. And the conversation continues with Shirin Bezhadi, author of The Unexpected CEO. And Shirin, we dropped up the first half of our discussion today with you at the doorstep of budget blinds and home franchise concepts. Why don't you pick us up from there and take us through some of the incredible milestones that have brought you to where we are today and to the book?
Yes. So gradually I became part of the team. It just felt like it was a great partnership. We became friends. And much like many entrepreneurial companies, we started solving for how do we continue to grow? Because franchising, especially, there are franchise systems that start off pretty strong, but then they get to a point where it's very difficult to cross that hurdle of how do we move away and grow from people that we immediately know, friends and family and customers, and really expand our franchise system to others. How do we do that? And frankly, it took a few years. It was a lot of trials and errors and adjusting and tweaking and looking at the support that we offered in different ways. And the needle wasn't moving the way we wanted it to. It took a few years to continue to perfect. And those were tough years because there were times where money was tight. Yes, we had units, but then how do we scale up? How do we continue to grow? How do we get it across to many more territories? And those are difficult questions to answer. And it requires a lot of really exploring and being creative and innovative, especially since our space was relatively new. Franchising was done and well known in food and QSR, but not so much in the home space, and definitely not home improvement, which is more of what we were about. We were a little bit heavier. We're a service. And so we didn't have anybody to emulate. We didn't have anybody to say, well, they did it this way, maybe we try the same. So we had to create and be innovative in a lot of ways, how we did things. Eventually, after all of those trials and tribulations, we landed on what I call the secret sauce. And the secret sauce was an accumulation of different things that we did well over time as we tested and landed on the right ways of doing things. And from that point, we started to grow fast. And by fast, I mean at the time when you sold 10 to 15 franchises a year, you're doing well, and we started selling them 10 to 15 a month. And the pace continued. So we were growing and we were growing well. Proud to say that years later, most of them renewed. So this was a solid foundation and one that we had built through a lot of good work for many years, of course. We knew it was on solid foundation. So in about 2005, we asked ourselves, are we only good at this product category, or are we good at franchising? Do we expand by going deeper into our supply chain and get involved in manufacturing, or do we want to go to other areas in the home and have additional concepts? And the latter is what we voted for, because we decided that what we believed we had become good at was franchising. Franchising, of course, in this home space also. So we thought, why not try another product category? This time around, whole home organization. Did a lot of exploring, launched that one from the ground up as well. And then, of course, before you know it, the Great Recession hit. And the Great Recession is when, if you recall, it was housing led and we were in home improvement. So it felt like the bottom fell out rapidly. We had to respond quickly. Of course, at first we were confused like everybody else. Like, is this here to stay? What is going on? How bad is it going to get? So learned a lot through that process. What we learned was, yes, we need to lick our wounds. Yes, we need to understand where we are and then move into action. So action meant really be a student of our own company and see where the floor is. What do we need to do? How bad can things be before we're out of business? And what's the gap from where we were to that level? And how do we not go there? So we had to be brave and revisit everything. We revisited the way we marketed because we now knew many, many fewer consumers were in the market looking to even spend any money, especially any money in home improvement. We revisited the way we supported our franchisees and redid all of that. We revisited our product offering. Would there be a new way of organizing our products with our suppliers? What programs and pricing can we negotiate best? To all of it to make sure that, one, we reach the few consumers that were in the market still, and two, support our franchisees who were suffering in many ways, not just because of our franchise, but because of the market as a whole, right? They also owned homes that perhaps could have been underwater, or they were also maybe had another spouse who had lost their job. So they weren't immune to everything else that was going on in the market, plus the idea that home improvement wasn't doing well. So we really updated a lot of ways we did things. And what happened as a result was that the pie of the consumer in the market had gotten really, really small. But because we, one, stayed in the business and a lot of people ended up going out of business, and two, we became really good at what we offered, that we became a bigger piece of that smaller pie. So as recovery started happening, the pie got bigger and now we had a bigger piece. So our real trajectory for growth happened as recovery in the marketplace happened. This is why I always talk about adversity, challenge, and change are opportunities for growth if you look at them that way. I call it the superpower of adversity. If you are able to grow through it, you come out the other side better because of it. And it's so interesting because in my personal life, I went more or less through the same thing. So in 2008, there was a Great Recession started. End of 2009, I got very sick and I was diagnosed with a brain tumor that was lodged between my optic nerves, and I had no choice but to have it removed. I start my book with that because it was life before brain tumor and it was life after, and the life after is so much better. I made so many good changes just to fast track. The surgery itself was 10 hours. They successfully removed the tumor through my endonasal endoscopy. However, apparently it failed and I lost all my spinal fluid. It was sudden death. I had to be back in surgery. So basically 15 hours of surgery in 10 days. Recovery from that required me to literally regain my balance. So after the second surgery and all that went with it and months of recovery, I learned to slow down because I had to. And I needed to observe because I didn't have a choice. And I had to literally learn to walk. So I would take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, the other way around. And I would set goals for myself on a daily basis and chip away at it day after day after day. Took some time, but I did recover, thankfully. What it did to me was to really heighten all of my senses in the sense of what is it that I want out of life? I understood people better. I connected with them better. And it was as a result of that, I made some fundamental changes in my life, including business. This is when we then brought in private equity.
Wow, this is an amazing story. And then that's a part of it I was not aware of. You just set me back a couple of inches listening to that portion of your story. So you were still in your role at HFC during this medical crisis in your life?
Yes, I was. We were also dealing with the Great Recession. So within 6 weeks, even though I was basically lying down, wasn't allowed to move my neck per my doctor's orders. And I explained that a lot in the book. Why that matters is that it just talks about how you can set goals, not goals, visions, and be able to live through them and live towards them. But I started working. Back then we would have calls, of course, we didn't have Zoom. And I needed to because we needed to make sure we survive. And I was in charge of a lot. So, yeah.
Well, private equity comes and literally I think that the tailored living and concrete craft brands connected to budget blinds probably coming out of recession gave you a greater opportunity to increase and enhance the lifetime value of a customer because you'd get second and third bites of the apple walking them through their house, wouldn't you?
Yes. So that was the idea. When we brought in tailored living, when we started tailored living, it was closet tailors. That was the idea that we could do cross promotions. Once you're in a customer's home, you can bring other brands, all of that. And then we set out intentionally to bring in private equity. Private equity didn't find us. I set out to find private equity. It was time. We had been in business for so long. And as it goes with entrepreneurial companies, the company had grown quite a bit. It just felt like it was time. So I set out to learn about, make connections, to bring in private equity. The idea was that we would sell and we would all walk off to the sunset. That was our thinking. That was our plan. They came back and said, okay, we will do this transaction. And by the way, magically, exactly the number we had in mind. Isn't that crazy? What they did say was that they were open to doing the transaction. They're willing to do the transaction, but that I would have to stay on. which makes sense. And I did some soul searching. I asked myself if this is what I wanted to do. And so I decided it was. So I accepted their offer. And that's when we hit the ground running. 2015, we finalized our deal. And pretty immediately, I got to work. We had, through this transaction, bought out a lot of C-level executives. So it was one, I didn't have a bench really to work with. I had some people on the bench, but not a full bench. For the first time, our franchisees had to digest the idea that we are going to be now owned by private equity and professionally run. My personal commitment and vision was that we really could create a full-blown platform. So what you mentioned of the 3 brands, if you really, in my mind, create a true platform, which is creating synergies across brands, using a lot of the intelligence, the technologies, the marketing know-how to use across the different brands, kind of make them brand agnostic, then you don't limit yourself to only 3 or 4 brands. You can have 7 brands, you can have 8 brands. That was the mindset. So lofty goals, set out to do that. And from the moment the transaction was completed, we were on a sprint. We left no stone unturned. We changed everything. The idea was we were excitedly bringing enhancements with our North Star always being making sure that our franchisees are successful. That was the thought. That was the thought process. So every service we brought on, every change we made with that in mind. As a result, what we had done in 20 some years up until that point, in the next 4 years, we better than doubled in a short few years. Our top lines grew, our bottom lines grew, our system-wide sales grew. It was very exciting and a very difficult but good few years. The end result was that by the time 2019 came around, we had acquired another franchise system and we set out to do another sale process this time around. Obviously, the company was a lot bigger. We had more brands with the mindset that the next folks walking in could potentially grow this platform. And so it was a fantastic, exciting, this time around exit. And I had been there 20 years. It was a lot of work, especially the past few years with the speed at which we did things. And I stepped down.
This was the fulfillment of your dream, though. The only thing I heard you say that caused me to wonder why did it even take a moment for you to decide that you wanted to stay on when private equity wanted you there? Because that was really what you set out to someday accomplish, right?
That's such a good question. Because I think at the time I had to ask myself if this was the one. If I wanted to do it here, am I up for this task?
In a little bit of time we've got left, Shirin, we have to ask you to take us through a view of what it is you're doing now and who you're doing it for and who in this audience can benefit from what it is you're doing and how you and they can get together.
Yes, thank you. Well, Stan, after I stepped down, I immediately asked myself this question: what is it that I want to do? And I realized that all of those years of trials and tribulations taught me lessons. There are some principles at play. And I wanted to make this next phase of my life about impact. Impact as in sharing that roadmap, those principles learned to help others grow, build, accomplish, and live their vision. I thought if I could, by sharing what I know, help others, then I've lived a fulfilled life. Initially, I was doing that only through speaking engagements and helping. I've been on boards, I've been advising companies, but in time it became obvious that if you want to help a larger audience, you have to do things differently. It was my son and daughter, Sam and Sarah, who in 2021 approached me to ask me to write my book. This was partially because in 2019, Forbes had done a video about my story and I was on the cover of Forbes.com. If I may help others by writing my book, then it's worth writing. So I did. So my book is called The Unexpected CEO, My Journey from Gas Station Cashier to $1 Billion CEO. It's a book about possibility. It's a book about rising through adversity. It's inspirational, but it's also instructional. What I'm doing today with it is that I'm going all in. I am not only talking about my book, and I hope that I can spread the message, and I'm spreading the message. I'm doing more speaking. I'm doing this kind of work, like I'm speaking with you right now, to try to reach people that are actively seeking this kind of advice and inspiration. Where I can be found, of course, One can type in The Unexpected CEO because it's everywhere. It's through Simon & Schuster and my great publishers, Matt Holt and Ben Bella. The book can be found by just typing it in, but also, of course, my website, Shirin Bezhadi, which is hard to spell.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on all kinds of social media.
I can't wait to get a copy of this book, and hopefully it'll come with an autograph on the front of it.
Of course. Well, thank you. I'm excited to share it, and I really appreciate your time, and it's good to talk to you.
It's good to talk to you again. This has been a wonderful conversation. Shirin Bezhadi, thanks so much for being here today. Well, that's a wrap for this week. Next week, I'm back and joined by Homefront Brands CEO Jeff Duden to talk about their portfolio of brands that include Top Rail Fence, Window Hero, Temporary Wall Systems, The Designery, and Roof Scientists. Until then, I'm Stan Friedman, wishing you the best, the very best, of all things franchising, and Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another episode of Franchise Today.